Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to study about data table class, data column class, and a data row class. So, in one of the video lecture of classes in ADO.net, we have discussed about what is data table, what is data column, and what is data row. So, same thing. The data table is a disconnected architecture in a C#.net. A disconnected architecture in the sense to use the data table in a C sharp, it's not necessary to connect your application with the database. If you want to create a virtual table, a table for a temporary use on your Windows application, so it's possible to create that table using data table. Now to that table you can add the columns, that is schemas, as per your convenient use. How much columns you want to, you can add those columns using data column class. Now if you want to add the values, that means a rows to that particular created table, so you can add the values or row to that particular table using the class data row. So let us start how to use the, just create a project, starts with the Windows form application as data table program. Just to create. So this is our Windows form application. So normally to create the table, just we need to add one data grid view to our form. So just so that created table we can display on a form as a on a data grid view. So we can create a table on a form load also, or we can create a table using button also. So normally we will create the project on a form load only. So for this, just double click on a form. Okay, so the data table, data column, and data row all are the classes from the system dot data namespace. This is the namespace which contains all the classes, all the methods related with the data table and data column and data row. So we did not to use any other namespace because it is a disconnected architecture. We need not to connect it with a database. So normally, first of all, we will create an object of a data table in a global session as a data table dt, and in the form load, so whenever we load our form, it must create a table. So for this, now to add the columns to the table, we can add the columns to the table using two ways. By mentioning there are two syntax to mention create a column, to mention the type of the column. So we will discuss both of them. So just starts with, just to create an object of a data column. To create, so I will create as a dc is equal to new data column. Then now to set the type of the column, to set the name of the column, so we need to change the mistake. It's data column dc is equal to new data column. Now while adding a column to the table, we need to mention the name of the column. Again we need to mention the type of the column. Again we can set the maximum length for if it is a string. So to set the name of the column, to set the type of the column, we can there are two syntaxes like this. The first one, dc dot data type is equal to system dot get data type, sorry, system dot types dot get type, and within the bracket, now we will create first column as a name column. So system dot string, we are creating a column of type string. Now set the name, dc dot column name is equal to name, then set the maximum length. DC dot max length is equal to, I will set it as a 20. So this is the first column. Now if you want to create a second column, create one more object of a data column as a DC1 is equal to new data column. Then again DC dot DC dot data type is equal to system dot type dot get type, create a column of type integer, a system dot int 32, DC1. So we have created object with the name of DC1. So here DC1 we have to use column number 1. So DC1 dot column name is equal to age, and DC1, so for the integer no need to set the length. So now if you want to add a column by a second method, so we can add that column after creating a complete object of a data table class. Okay, so first of all, now if you want to add those columns, this created two columns to our table. So now we will create the object, complete object, as a dt is equal to new data table. Okay, then dt dot columns dot add dc, dt dot columns dot add dc1 second column. So now data grid view, we have added data grid view dot data source is equal to dt. Okay, so we'll save it, just run application. Now you can see there are two columns we have added to our data grid view. This is how we can create a disconnected using the disconnected architecture we can create a table. Now if you want to add more columns, just by the second way also you can add like this. If you want to add the third column, so to add the third column to your, we can use the second method by directly or dt dot column like this, or dt dot columns dot add, and here to this method we can pass all the things. So we will pass one more thing, integer name. We have a string name here, a string age, then we will add the address, the column name as address, and within the after double quote mark complete comma we have to mention the type of, within the bracket mention the type as a string. Now we will see. So just save it, again run your application. Now you can see this is, if you want to add the third one more column, dt dot columns dot add, within the bracket mobile number, type of, within the bracket again mention long value. So save it, just run your application. Now you can see this is the fourth column that we have added to our table. Now this is columns are considered as a schemas. Now to add the values to the created table, means if you want to add the rows to created tables, so you can we can add the values to the table, like we can accept those values from text boxes also, or you can directly mention those values by creating an object of a data row. So normally if you want to add the values on a form load only, you can set the code for a form load also. Now if you want to add the values using button, whenever you will click on button, if you want to insert the value, it's possible to insert the values. So change the name of this button as insert. Okay, now just double click on this button, create the object of a data row as a dr is equal to dt dot new row. Then now it considers this dr object as an array object, because the column or the tables the columns created by the dt, this data table, are 4. So in that table there are 4 columns. So this data row object will considered as an array of a 4. So the first, it will at the first location, means dr of 0, it stores the name. At the dr of 1, it stores the age. At the dr of 2, it stores the address. So like this, if you want to add the value, just like this, dr of 0 is equal to its of type string. So I will give my name for the first column. For the second column, age, so dr of 1 is equal to, then dr of 2 is equal to address, and the dr of 3, that is row number 4, is equal to mobile number, and here data grid view 1 dot data source is equal to dt. Now save it, just run your application. Now these are the columns. Now just insert, click on insert. Oh, so it's not working. So we need to check data grid view when data source is equal to dt. Okay, we forgotten to add this row to the table. So to add this particular row to the table, so dt dot rows dot add this dr. Now this row is added to the table. So now insert, now you can see. So this is how we can add the values or the table row values to the table. So this is the one way of adding the values using the index. So you can add the values using a column name also, like this. So same like create one more object of a data row as a data row 1 is equal to dt dot new row. Now after this, dr within the bracket, mention the name of the column. So name of the column, first column is name only. So name as a string is equal to, mention the name as Okay, then sorry, we have to use the object dr1, okay, for the row. So dr1 within the bracket, the second column, age, then dr2, sorry, dr1 within the bracket, address, and dr1 of last column is mobile number is equal to, okay. Now we need to add this column row also. So data row, sorry, dr1 dot rows dt dot rows dot add dr1. So save it, just run your application. Now click on insert button. So these are the two rows. So this is how, this is the second method. By using the name of the column also we can add the values to the table. Now third way, using a single statement also it's possible to add the rows in a single line. Also you can add the values to the rows. So like for this purpose, so dt dot rows dot add method, and to the add method pass the value as per the matching. So first as xyz, so second is an integer, again third one is the a string, and the last is a mobile number. Again if you want to add one more row, dt dot rows dot add matching values. First is a string, second is integer, again third is a string, again mobile number. So save it, just run your application, click on insert button. So this is, so these are the three ways you can add the values. This is the first one, by mentioning the index of a column 0 to 1 2 3, by mentioning the name of the column, and by using the single line statement, it is passing the values as per the matching with the column type. So it will add those values to the table. So this is how we can create a temporary table on a data grid view using the data table class. We can add the column using data column class, and we can insert the values using data row class. So again there are various operations, means methods we have, that is we can clear the data grid view. So here we will make, just change the property of this text as clear, and here dt dot call the method clear, so it will clear. Control s, just run your application, just, so it will insert all the values. Now just clear it, so clear. Now again insert, now it insert, again clear, now insert. So this is how we can clear the data grid view at the runtime. Now we can create a clone of this data grid view using the clone method. For this, just add one more data grid view to our window, to our form. Then create one more button as clone button. Change the text property of this button as clone property. Okay, so for this, just create one more data table object as a dt1 is equal to dt dot clone. Call the method clone, and to the data grid view 2 dot data source, give the data source as a dt1. So clone copy. So save it, run your application. Now insert clone, insert clone. Okay, clear. Just stop the execution. Just if you want to add the values, copy the values from data grid view 1 to second data grid view. So we have to use the method with the name of copy. So you change the text property of this button as copy. Okay, then just double click on this button, data table dt1 is equal to dt dot copy, and data grid view 2 dot data source is equal to dt1. Just save it, run your application. Now, so this is the insertion, create a clone, copy the values. Now clear. So again insert the values, create a clone, uh, insert values, insert values, insert values. Now copy the values, so it will copy. So just we will run our application one more time. Just insert two times, then create a copy. Okay, so it will create all the values, it will copy all the values from the data grid 1 to data grid view 2. So this is clear that a clone will create a clone of a table definition. Just it will add the number of rows and all these things, sorry, number of columns, not the number of, it will create the copy of a columns. So same table. Now the copy method will copy all the values from that source table. So this is how the various methods of a data table works, and this is all about the data table, data columns and the data row classes in C#. Thank you.